All right, we are live. Welcome, fiends, to Handle with Scare, presented by the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Our show discusses horror movies and the phobias they emphasize. With me tonight, as always, are both of my co-hosts, Holly Hooch and Johnny. Guys, here we are. Fear of the Wealth, in this case, kicking off this past week with a very intriguing pick this week. Kind of turning the tide a little bit in regards to like what genre we're deep diving into. But if we're talking about class division, I don't think we could have selected like a more fit-in, like back-to-back selection for plutophobia than what we have currently at this time. But before we jump into tonight's pick, just a couple of general reminders. We've been doing the watch parties over on Stream Lounge on Mondays, Thursdays, and Sunday nights. And again, Stream Lounge is available on PC and Mac, free download. Most of the stuff I've been streaming have been on Tubi, which is also free. So, you don't have to worry about having any sort of subscription or anything like that. And you can find the schedule there in our show notes. But anyways, back to the topic on hand. Last week, we talked about what happens when the rich feed off of the poor and they shunt the poor. In the middle of this giant goo orgy in society. And
it's
tonight,
orgy monster. I thought we established this last time.
I mean, there's a lot of things happening, which of course everyone needs to go see the third act of Society if they haven't already at this point. Which, if you haven't yet, what the hell are you waiting on? We already talked about it. Our words cannot do the third act justice enough. But tonight, we are fighting our way to the front in Snowpiercer, which is my selection, which, I've seen this movie several times, but it had been a while. And, sometimes there are movies that you just forget how fucking good they are. And we were watching this last night, and I'm just like, man, I forgot how much this movie, like keeps the blood pumping. Because there are some really great action sequences. Some really interesting nods in regards to timing of like how far into the movie you are, because there is kind of like that halfway point where like it even like does the whole wink wink. Yeah, you're not even halfway through the movie yet in this case. And of course, we mentioned the Willy Wonka theory, which we'll talk a little bit about, I'm sure, at some point in the movie. But all in all, this movie is still one of my favorites in regards to like post-apocalypse or just sci-fi in general, and I'm looking forward to diving into this one tonight.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I haven't watched it in a long time, and I hate to say the words. It's one of my favorites, but it really is. I mean, it's one of the few times you get to see Chris Evans in a very it's a very emotive role for him, and he definitely has the range. I think. That's not, he usually gets cast as either the hot asshole or the hot superhero or the hot love interest. And then this one, like, it's just, I said hot way too many times. I'm glad Phil's not here right now. But it really goes to show he's got really great range. And, he's got multiple really great speeches in this movie where he makes you feel it. And I'm getting goosebumps. So, let's dive right in. I love this thing. And also, Tilda Swinton, so what's not to love? Oh! And, of course, we've got Song Kang-ho as well, who's just amazing and awesome in everything he touches.
Mm-hmm. He's the dad.
He's the dad, yeah, he's him, yeah.
I love him, but he does play the same character in every movie.
He does. Well,
he's awesome.
I would say, maybe the level of apathy in... Well, okay, yeah, you might be right. In the level of apathy, and also with the exception of, like, being a really, like, loving father.
Yeah.
That's his character, which, again, like, his character in Parasite...
He's always, like, the lovable loser.
Well, in this one, he's an intellectual in this one. He's not so much in Parasite, and, of course, not so much in The Host, but still, like, the whole, like, apathetical towards life, except for his love for his kids. So.
Yeah.
You're right, I guess. So I was gonna protest. I was like, no, yeah, that fits. But he's really good at it.
So he's awesome, though, for
Absolutely. So, of course, as I mentioned, this is a post-apocalyptic movie, and all of it takes place on Snowpiercer, which is this train that is basically rotating around like the world once a year, essentially. Which is very interesting because there are times throughout the movie where we kind of have these different historical events that have occurred. And you that definitely plays into kind of like the grander picture towards the end of the movie, and just dealing with the revolt and how that plays into the father and daughter's story in Snowpiercer. But what was interesting about this movie is of course Chris Evans has had a pretty successful career. And a lot of people are used to seeing him in very specific roles, as you mentioned, like in Captain America. And the whole time, you're looking at him in this, and it's just like they really went out of their way to put him in like as baggy clothing as possible to show like that he's not like this really buff, strong guy in this movie. So they're trying to hide it. But I remember when this movie came out and I saw the poster, and it was telling of what was going to happen to his character in this movie, because you saw a hand injury, because he's basically like trying to hide it behind like some of the other people on the poster, which of course ties into part of the engine and how that operates towards the tail end of the movie. But what's interesting about this is, of course, you have the different parts of the train. Each one serves their purpose. They basically do the whole ordeal where like everyone has their purpose in here. Everything has to be concise, and it's all formula and number driven. Everyone has their role, and you have the different classes. You have first, second, third, and then of course you have like these different cabooses as well that are like agricultural based. You have kind of like the salon, you have a sushi station, there's like an aquarium and shit like on this train. So it's like they really thought of everything, but of course a lot of it stems in the tail end of the train, and they're just trying to fight their way throughout the train as they try to revolt against the upper class throughout the movie. And just the way that they kind of go about it, and the kids are constantly getting taken, and they have their purpose, which is sinister in its own right, because they're basically like working these kids to death in a lot of situations, which also ties into the Willy Wonka theory. But there's just so much to unpack with this particular movie. But I just have to say, like, I remember the first time seeing this, the score was really what drew me in initially, on top of the fact that, you have that Korean and also American, like, cohesion, because, like, this was Anho's, like, first American film, which is really interesting to think about. So, like, even before he had all this later success, like, at least audience, I wouldn't say they were acquainted to him yet, but they got, like, their first taste of it. And I was really curious to see whether or not there would be like any huge differences between like what American audience saw versus what we saw overseas.
What is it? We were just talking before recording. Did this movie come out after The Host?
I think so.
This was 2013.
And The Host was 08?
No, 2000.
2006.
Oh,
2006. Right. Which The Host is purely a Korean production, and then this one, and that's kind of the one that seemed like it was his movie that made American audiences aware of who he was. It got a theatrical release here, and then I guess, as you were saying, this was his first fully American. Is it a fully American production, Snowpiercer, or is it a combo production with?
It's a combo.
Yeah,
That's
with
very
Korea.
cool.
That's what I kind of suspected.
It's neat.
But it's cool. Yeah, definitely. And it also kind of starts out like Underwater, to compare it again to Underwater, where it just kind of starts off. Like, it doesn't really give you a long intro of meeting the characters. You kind of just jump right in where the revolt is basically starting almost right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the tensions are already stirred. They're getting ready to strike. But it's a very exciting way to start a movie. You're already amped up. So I really appreciate that.
And again, it does the thing that modern movies, I think, do that I like, where an older movie would have given you a full first act of just kind of mundane, being on the train, meeting the characters, slow pace, and then giving you all the story, and then as you get to the third act, you get the big revolt and all the action. But this does the better kind of...
Yeah, it turns up the heat from the start.
It starts right off, and you get the story as it goes. Yeah.
And I appreciate that because I think, that's the whole point of the story, right? That it's a livable situation, and to try to add that to try to introduce everybody in a very slow and this is our daily life sort of way, kind of makes you wonder, like, so what's wrong with the protein bars? Although we can get into those a little later because I don't actually see what's wrong with the protein bars.
Oh, but yeah, exactly. And of course, you get like the thing that's great is it's pretty heavy-handed with the class division. Like you immediately know exactly what's going on.
How do we know he's the king? He doesn't have shit all over him.
It's like, yeah, seriously. But it's done in a good way. It's definitely like a story that kind of doesn't take place in the real world. It's a very kind of stylized, hyper, almost like comic booky kind of world, And one of the things that struck me kind of right away in the beginning of and things that they were kind of doing in the early parts of the movie is it almost felt like kind of a Terry Gilliam type of world. Like
Brazil. Yeah.
Or Baron Munchausen.
There's I can totally agree with that, but I think what Terry Gilliam did really well, he added this very nice, heavy chunk of grotesqueness that this particular movie wasn't as heavy-handed in, but it's definitely approaching. I mean, of course, as you're moving through the class system, you start seeing just how decadent people are and how kind of gross that can be. But they're still pretty polished and nice-looking. I mean, the really awesome part about Brazil was seeing, like, they were aiming towards a nice, clean, perfect look, but weren't quite getting there. Like, we're horribly disfigured. So, which, again, like, just... That's the Terry Gilliam touch for sure.
And I'm blanking on her name. Tilda Swinton. Mm-hmm. She very much felt
she was
a Terry Gilliam kind of Monty Python type of character.
Well, she always does. I mean, she's pretty incredible. Like, it's kind of hard to really describe her style just because like she's a chameleon and she's so good at just like fitting into character. She looks completely different from movie to movie, and it's really impressive.
And I don't want to I don't mean this comparison in a negative way, but her character and the way she was kind of depicted early on when we first meet her, when they do the selection, when they select the kids, also very much reminded me of the other movies that were coming out at the time, the other post-apocalyptic movies that were kind of like Hunger Games.
Okay, yeah.
And like Maze Runner and all of those.
She would have been great in all of those.
Where she kind of feels like a character from Hunger Games.
Yes.
Where her kind of over-the-topness and everything. But I don't mean that in a negative way, because I like this movie far more than any of those other movies. But it's interesting how of its time the movie is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where there was a whole passel of post-apocalyptic movies come out.
I always love those.
Yeah, this one it was also different just in the sense that, it has a very unique setting. I mean, obviously it is post-apocalyptic, and, it's kind of like a new ice age, just because, like, everyone believes that, Earth is not livable in its current state because of all the ice and all of the snow. So basically, whatever remnants of humanity was left at that point were taken into like this self-sustaining train, which is the Snowpiercer, which is ran by Wilford, who is of course at the front of the train, which is where the revolt is all trying to get to. But unfortunately, not everyone actually gets to that point. outside of like one person, really, in this case. But I think one of the smallest details that really blew me away about this movie, and it's not like a huge thing, but I thought it was so smart the way that they did that. So when the revolt happens and they're trying to get to like open the gates, and obviously they find the guy to help them open the gates, right? They're trying to communicate with him, and of course he's Korean, so like there's that language barrier. But of course you have like this translator device, and initially it works okay, but as soon as it malfunctions, that's when you get the subtitles to actually hit on the screen. And I thought like that was such a small detail, and I appreciated that they actually went that direction, so it just wasn't constantly like it made you like in that moment when you're using a translator, like pay more attention to the actual sequence and how everything is being laid out, as opposed to like, all right, my eyes are just gonna be glued to like the bottom of the screen. You're actually still getting that conveyed emotion as all of this is happening. And I cannot think of another movie that actually went that direction either.
No, I can't. Like you were saying, it's such a smart move, because them using technology to communicate initially really, I think, maintains Nam's sort of sense of apathy, where like, oh, no, fuck no, I don't know English. If you want to talk to me, you need to communicate with me. Although he's the one that points out where the translators are. But and then when you mention when the technology fails and then the subtitles, it's just such a smart move, and just really adds a level of I guess I don't know if the word authenticity applies, but it just makes the characters just seem that much more authentic.
And right away in the beginning of the story, when they take the attendance of everybody and count everyone, they make it clear that it's an international group of people on the train, that they're from all over the place.
It makes you wonder how they got on train at the same time.
Because when we find out later, everyone sort of got on at the same time. And
so why, I don't understand what they produce for the rest of the train other than little babies to run the engine. So is that it? Or
well, no, remember they select the guy to the violinist, and then we see him later and he plays for the class.
So they just keep him around in case they want to select somebody from there.
But also I think the assumption is labor too, that they're working and doing things that the wealthy people don't want to do there.
Because I kind of got the sense, well, okay, yeah, you're right, because at one point when they get to the protein bar room, they know the guy. So whenever, I guess, there's the people way in the back of the train, and then there's like the working class, which I don't know if the working class is on the working class, which would still be back of the train, sort of. And then you've got the middle class, which is the folks that get their own little train cart and get to read books and drink tea. And then you get the super wealthy at the front, right? So I know that they're usually divided in threes, and I just did four, but I feel like that is what's making me justify why they wouldn't just cut loose that last train cart and be like, fuck you guys.
And just bail. Well, because at that point, they're all under the impression that no one can survive out of the train.
No, I mean as in like, if the rest of the rich people on the train hate
just
them
cut
so
them
much.
off. Yeah. No, they use them for sure.
They use them for sure. Okay.
Well, also,
the assumption is labor, though, you were saying.
But also the breeding thing is super important, because as we learn, the little kids are integral to running the engine.
And they did say that they were trying to cut them down by 74%, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. And I was going to say, because the balance, they always talk about they have to maintain balance.
Yeah.
But it's only the poor people who get culled, to use that word, who get killed off to maintain the balance. Like, they're not going to actually kill the wealthy people and throw them off the train.
And I was like, if you just gave them, like, condoms, although I don't know if those were extinct, probably not. But that's not the whole point, right? The whole point is to breed them like rabbits and then cut them down when there's too many that they don't want.
It's just, they're basically kind of maintaining them like animals, basically.
Like in real life.
It's like a zoo.
Yep. Right. Exactly. And of course, they're all crammed into, the tail compartments. like sardines, basically, and they're all overseen by the armed guards. And I say armed in the sense that, like, they had guns. Of course, a major part of the plot revolves around the revolt, and there was a lot of thoughts about, like, well, maybe the guns are just for a show, because they had the initial revolt, which they talk about when you see the Frozen Seven or whatever terminology they used. Which was like one of the first uprisings that had happened. And, they had this theory, or Chris Evans' character had this theory that the bullets were just extinct at this point in time. Like, there's no ammunition. And, of course, you have that big moment where, he goes to the front of the tail, and, he has the machine gun pointed to his skull, and he pulls the trigger for the guy, and then as soon as that moment happens, and you're like, oh shit, they don't have any ammo, that it's just game on at that point. Which, talk about a huge risk, But of course, bullets do come into play, both for kind of like sending messages, but also in a literal sense too, because they do eventually manufacture bullets on Snowpiercer, much to the dismay of the people who are revolting at the time, and that's when things start to really go sideways.
Which, not to jump ahead too much, but they realize that the guards don't have bullets after the previous revolts, but it makes sense though that they would end up having bullets in reserve,
right.
The wealthy people, because they would say, okay, like, we're super low on bullets, so we'll
let these guards get killed.
Yeah.
But if they cross this line, then you can start using bullets.
Yeah, exactly.
Which incidentally, the line was "our kids."
And then also, let's not forget that they're getting secret messages from the front of the train, giving them ideas and clues.
That was, we can go ahead and spoil it, right? And just say that the messages are coming from Wilford, from the head of the train. But it was really, the disappointment is very layered, right? When you get that realization, because your hope is that there are several cells throughout the train that are all willing to make changes in the way that things are run, but in reality nobody is, and it's all like a plot just to reduce the numbers of the people in the back. So, because that was the idea too, like, oh, somebody at front is helping us, somebody's helping us, but no, nobody's helping you.
Yeah, like it could be the workers in the front or something that
Nope.
are sending.
Maybe somebody in the militia. Nope.
But so they do start, and I kept thinking the whole time, Chris Evans' friend, the other guy,
Edgar, the younger guy.
Edgar. I kept thinking he was Tom Holland the whole time.
Might as well be.
He looks just like him and sounds like him.
It feels bad that I also get the guy from the Hunger Games confused with Tom Holland.
But and then so they do start the revolution, the next revolution, the third or fourth one. And what happens? Like,
so they start the revolution. They make it through to the very first boss that they have to encounter is that super giant big dude, and
basically the brute.
The brute.
He's like an orc. Yeah.
The orc. And then he's actually taken out by like the super agile, like
the
small frame.
Guy.
That guy was great.
Who I think I've seen. I didn't look him up, but I swear I think I've seen him in. He may be in that movie, The Block. Have you seen that? It's a really good Thai movie, I think, where an entire block of apartments. If you've ever seen the Dread movie, this is the original Dread movie, where an entire block of apartments is run by drug dealing gang, and they have to sort of fight their way up to the top of the building. And I think he was in that, but I might be wrong. But I thought I recognized him from that. But I think he's like a kung fu kind of martial arts actor.
I can tell.
Yeah. But he was great. And the first boss, very kind of video game.
Very,
how you progress through the movie.
Especially as like it's linear, so absolutely.
But in a good way, not in a bad way. And then what? Do we get to the food
We
already?
get to the food right away.
Which is the first big thing. Well, also John Hurt. Let's not forget. He's awesome. Love John Hurt.
And we were just talking about Octavia Spencer. Like,
and Octavia
back
Spencer.
when I watched this for the first time, I didn't really I liked her, I noticed her, but we were just talking about how she's building such a great career. Like nothing but like.
Mm-hmm. Well, they decede. Interesting. That. I don't know if I can pause it.
Hi.
Hey,
There
don't
we
know
go.
what happened there. We just popped out.
Yeah, I know. I was like,
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Nope.
Do we look okay on your end?
Nope.
Oh.
No, you're
And is this
tilted.
going on the stream? Yes, it is. All right, I think we just need to let it sit for a minute. Okay. Oh,
It's like super zoomed in though.
Uh-huh.
Technology,
Shoot.
how does it work?
Oh, whoops.
What is this thing over here? I have no idea what I'm doing.
Can we? Maybe we have to join this with it this way.
Woo. Uh-huh. No? Still not working? Can you edit this? Should I stop talking in case this... Well, why don't we... There we go. Hold on a second. Ah.
Should we just do it this way? I mean...
Yeah, so we can just see the top of your
I
head.
don't know. We might have to get like better equipment going forward.
Well, it's just weird. I don't know why it's.
Did we do this? How did we
It was
log in
zoomed in,
before? Was it sideways before when we logged in? Or
We always have to play with it. Should we just log in again?
Yeah.
Got it in. We're going away for a second.
Okay. Always has to be something, guys. That's okay.
How were we doing it before?
Like this. Everything we've been doing right now.
I mean, how were we making it work before?
John, we've been doing this together this whole time. I have no idea. I wonder if I hit something that... Hold on.
You broke it. Perks of doing it live.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay.
Nana had
I
to do
was
some
gonna say.
reading.
So we gotta choose it before we join. Okay.
We did it before. I don't know. Let's not fight.
So where were we?
We're talking about Octavia Spencer.
Oh yeah, Octavia Spencer.
And how she's been building a pretty incredible filmography.
And she's in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man for like 1 minute. She's got a tiny role in that movie.
And then she's in that Shape of Water.
Oh yeah.
She's in the Hidden Figures, is it?
Yep. This movie has an all-star cast.
It really does.
There's a lot of those. There's a lot of that guys in this movie, which is the people who.
Oh, you don't remember their name, and they're like, "It's that guy."
It's the people who are always in tons of movies, but you don't know who they are.
I feel that way about Edgar, the guy who plays Edgar who gets killed.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that guy. He's a British dude.
The funny thing is, you might remember him because from my generation, I remember him as a child actor from
Billy
Elliot.
That's Billy Elliot?
He's Billy Elliot.
That's a good movie.
That movie was a big hit back in the 90s.
I remember. I was there.
Definitely. He's Billy Elliot. And I think he was in the King Kong movie, too, with the Peter Jackson.
He was?
Yeah. He was the guy. But he's still he's Tom Holland to me.
He's Tom Holland to you?
Is that his name, Tom Holland?
Yeah.
I think I say their name.
The guy who's, the new Spider-Man. Yeah.
But, and John Hurt is in it, and he's great. Hellboy, of course, most recent, probably biggest thing we know him from. But,
Good stuff. All right, so we're at
the orc boss. Oh,
orc
before
boss.
The food, and then we get to the food.
And then we get to the
level.
food. Which again, that's when that's really good evidence that they're pulling people from the back to do jobs. And I don't know when they're killing them off. They've only been traveling for 17 years. So
yeah, it's
like how many workers are going to die off that you need to pull from the back? You know?
Well, I mean, it depends.
But what am I poking holes for?
Depends on how hard.
Yeah,
depends on how hard they're worked.
And if they're fed properly. Remember, we find out later that the first like several months or a year or whatever.
The first month maybe was.
Really
the
bad.
first month was where they had to cannibalize each other. And,
They basically just left them back there unattended.
Damn.
But they get to the food, and the funny thing is when they look in the food thing to see what the protein bars are made of, and they show the horrified reaction of the characters before we see it, I thought, oh, it's going to be people. It's going to be like Soylent Green. It's going to be like arms and legs in there being ground up for the food. But then it was just bugs.
Then it was just bugs. And it reminds me of this one time I was at this like science museum, and Joe and I were just walking around, and I go up to this like this person that has a bunch of like cheesy poofs in little tiny containers, like free samples. And they're like, "Hey, you want to try these? They're made from crickets." And I'm like, "Are they free?" And I ate one and then I took one with me. So then I'm like, "So what if they're bugs? Like, well, what does it taste like?"
I mean, seriously, not to be like, and not to be an asshole, but it's like that's not bad. Like
I mean, it's not great, but
there's a lot of cultures that eat. I think we talked about this last week. I don't know if it's on the recording or not, but like, there's a lot of cultures that eat bugs, and we eat lobsters and crabs, which are spiders. Basically arachnids.
I just heard your story.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, you already had the cannibal phase. It's like, well, would you rather get hooked on the taste of human flesh, or would you rather eat bugs?
And that's the thing, right? Like, first it's kind of like, oh, it seems like they're overreacting about the bugs. And then later when you find out that Chris Evans has been eating babies, and that it's like, really? You're going to freak out about eating bugs after you've been eating babies for a couple of months?
I feel like the reaction should have been like, ugh.
And I don't know if this makes me a bad person, but I literally laughed out loud when Chris Evans said that babies taste the best. They found out that babies taste the best.
That was just like super like hardcore speech.
That was so funny though.
That's what I was like, oh man, Chris Evans got some soul.
Babies taste
tastes the best.
But
Makes sense.
Yeah, so the food thing was a little bit like that was kind of definitely like, oh, what are you guys complaining about? Like,
yeah.
At least they process it into bars.
Is it free?
And honestly, like if things keep going on the way they are in the real world, we're going to be eating protein bars made out of bugs ourselves pretty soon. So I mean, we better get used to.
I already had some cheesy poofs.
Totally.
And I just heard that there's like this very expensive Mexican delicacy, which even though I'm Mexican, I've never heard about. They call it like Mexican caviar, or like that's like the nickname for it. And it's ant eggs that are seasoned, and there's some sort of process that they do to them. And then they're in a little pile, like, you know, a caviar pile would be, and then you eat them like you would caviar, and apparently they're crazy good.
Yeah. I mean,
put in a taco.
Cool.
I'm ready.
And then, where do they go after?
Oh, right after that, do they have another fight? Because I feel.
Oh, is that where they meet up with
yes,
with all the guards that have axes and bats?
Oh my gosh, like the
tunnel fight.
They're on the way. Oh.
But before that, they go to that weird human morgue place where they free
they find
two people, which is interesting. I don't know if that's explained, but like people are just sort of held in like suspended animation,
like it's prison, right?
Drawers, yeah. But like you're sort of you're unconscious, and then they pull you out and wake you up, which is they never explained it, but that's kind of interesting.
And why did the daughter have to go in there too?
Yeah, was she his daughter?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But that's when they free him, of course.
Mm-hmm. And soon after is when they kind of realize that, hey, you know, if we control the water, because the next stage is the water train, the water processing facility on the train. And they decide that if they can control the water, then they don't have to go all the way to the top. They can just bring the train to its knees. Mm-hmm. But then that's when they meet all the super creepy militia with the hoods and stuff. That was such a great fight. But I have to. One thing that kind of stood out to me is like, you're on a fucking train. Why doesn't this look like an Old Boy scene? You know that scene from that horror movie Old Boy where he's in a narrow hallway and he's being attacked?
Oh yeah, the elevator.
The big one-shot scene where he fights everybody
so good. But
like a video game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's like because the place is so narrow, like they sort of you're not only dealing with like really a brutal, really cool fight, but also the claustrophobia part of it and the restrictions that it has on your movement play a part into the fight. That doesn't play into this at all. That's a very wide train that they're fighting in, which I'm not complaining because Bong Joon-ho is a genius and he can do whatever the fuck he wants. But all I was thinking was like, hey, you know, that might have been kind of interesting if like the fact that they're on a train would have restricted them a little bit, other than just the tunnel part.
Or just accidentally clipping someone because of how much you're, swinging back and forth because you're on a train.
Or like the hallway fight in Daredevil, the Netflix Daredevil, and those hallway fights.
I love those. I love hallway fights.
Yeah, they could have definitely done a little, but that was cool.
That was a fantastic scene. Yeah.
When the daughter says she's sort of clairvoyant, and she says
they never clear that up, huh?
Yeah, it's sort of implied. It's weird. It's implied in other parts of the movie that some people have developed like psychic powers too, which is weird.
So I mean, she doesn't like know that much. She just kind of knows what's behind a fucking wall or a door. So it's not that bad. You know, maybe she's got really good hearing. I don't know. And
I don't know if I was mixing things up, but I'm not sure if it was because of the drug that was happening.
Oh, maybe.
But I kept thinking, they were calling the drug Chronos.
Mm-hmm. Oh, like the movie.
Or also there's that movie about the drug that makes people travel in time. It's like a streaming movie with the guy who plays the Falcon from the Marvel movies. Okay. But the drug in that is called Chronos, I believe.
Oh, sure.
And it's about a drug that makes you travel through time.
I totally went a really illogical direction, like.
Oh, like
the
Chronos
movie? Yeah, it had nothing to do with that. But I was like, oh. But what was it called? It was Chronol. What?
Chronol.
Yeah, Chronol.
It's Chronol.
Side effects might include clairvoyance.
Mm-hmm.
But we find out it's a bomb.
It's a bomb. And so the going back to the scene, the fight scene, one of my favorite things about it is how weak it makes me feel. Because you've got these really gigantic, strong dudes, and they're not using guns. They're using, like, fucking axes. Because, you know, they're going to save their bullets, right?
And spears.
Yeah. And it's just, like, it kind of put a little bit of anxiety in me to think, like, I'd be so immediately dead in this situation.
And what was cool, too, about that is that it fit in with the bullet thing, because a lot of those weapons that they were wielding were homemade weapons. Those spears were just kind of like poles that had like metal. It looked like they just sort of attached metal points to the end.
What was the thing with the fucking fish? I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. Where they cut the fish before they...
I know it's like to put blood on the weapons. I think I've seen that before where it's like, I don't know. But it's like, to show them that it's fish blood doesn't really strike fear into anybody.
The funny thing is that first when they brought the fish out, I thought, oh, they're going to try to bribe them with the fish. Like, they'll be like, we'll give you this fish, just go back to the back of the train and you can eat this nice big fish.
Really nice big fish.
but no, they did that thing.
That was no.
Yeah, like, when I saw it, like, I always took it as, like, well, maybe... it's like a way to poison the blade?
Yeah.
No, like, yeah. I didn't really get that.
But it's like,
that
we're going to not chop you up immediately. We're going to kill you slowly with poison.
But yeah, I know, that's what I was kind of wondering, that same thing, if it was like to taint it. But yeah.
That could be it, yeah, for sure.
I felt like that was something, like that was like a reference to something that I wasn't getting, you know? I was like,
yeah.
I'm supposed to get this,
yeah,
but I'm not getting it.
I'm gonna Google
I wonder
it
if that's
really
like a
quick to
Korean
see
thing,
if we can get it.
Like a you sleep with the fishes kind of thing, like The Godfather, you know, when they send you a fish wrapped in newspaper.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. You know, while T's looking this up, I did want to give a little shout out to my buddy Chris.
Okay, it is because animal blood can be
Animal
toxic.
blood can be toxic.
Oh, because of their poisoning the blades.
Wait, let me finish my shout out. So a buddy of mine watches the show. He wanted me to say hi to him on the show. Hi Chris and hi Lori. So just saying hi. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
So of course, like, also during this scene, obviously, like, the rebellion are still fighting fairly well despite all of this. Even though it's just like weapon v weapon at this point in time. But what they don't know is that there's this long ass tunnel ahead of them. Of course, all of the Hatchet gang know this, and they have their night vision goggles, which I thought was a very unique way to kind of set things up, because the rebellion don't know like how long they're going to be in this tunnel for at this point in time, and that scene goes on for a few minutes as well. But you have that moment where they try to have everyone fall back, which doesn't really work out all that well for them in this case. And of course, that's when the bodies really start to pile up, because they lose their eyesight, they don't have the vision anymore, and the opposition has the upper hand because they can see them clearly using the night vision goggles. But the whole time, you have Tilda just like looking on with her binoculars as like all this carnage is ensuing. But as soon as like you get past that tunnel, that's when you really start to see like the aftermath of everything, and seeing like how many people were actually killed or wounded in that specific battle. And I thought it was a great way to do it. So it's knowing your environment, having the upper hand. And, like, even when a train gets to like outside of the tunnel, and when everyone looks outside, like, that in itself is blinding as well because of how much snow there is, and you see the sunlight shining through the windows as well. So you've got like the two different contrasts going on too. So you have the super light and then the super dark.
I mean, I know it's not a very significant part, but there is a whole scene about the first time they see windows. Because I mean, for all
they haven't seen outside for
17 years, or if you happen to be Edgar, you've never seen outside, which is nuts. And so their eyesight is just
being a train baby.
It's kind of like that scene from Silence of the Lambs where Buffalo Bill has the night vision.
Oh, yeah.
And what's her name?
Clarice.
Clarice is, in the house and she can't see. And we get that shot of everybody kind of trying to feel around and they can see and they start killing everyone. I think that's where they lose the most.
They lose all their numbers, actually.
Yeah,
with the exception of all four. And that's, the ending of that fight, which of course is that very traumatic, like Edgar versus Mason, like, do you go save your buddy who's, you can't really save. Like, he's got a knife through his throat. Mm-hmm. As soon as you move that way, the dude's dead. Or go after the head of the existing car so that you can potentially just stop the carnage right there. And with the whole night vision goggle thing, they've lost basically their entire advantage.
Almost everyone.
Yeah, their upper hand of like having the numbers.
Yeah, they at least had some measure of a counterattack because they do like run the torches like from the tail end of the train. So you kind of like have the whole like lighting of the torch situation like with the Olympics basically, and everyone just like handed it off, which I thought was a pretty cool touch. But yeah, unfortunately, Edgar at that point was dead to rights. No matter what decision Curtis was going to make in that moment, and of course, he does abandon him in that case to get to Mason. Which puts the hit on
and it does
Edgar at that point in time.
Another opportunity for Chris Evans to really show some acting chops. His grief and the turmoil was very. I think he worked through that really well in the movie. So, good job, Chris.
And we get that great scene in there that also was one of the things that really made me think of Terry Gilliam was the part where all the fighting stopped so that they could count down the new year. And then everybody cheered, and they showed, the guy who was, the guard who was, half dead, and, his friend made him, wiggle his head around, and he was like, yay! When they that is such a, Monty Python and Terry Gilliam thing to do.
That's pretty neat, yeah.
It reminded me of Baron Munchausen, where the Turks and who I forget who they're fighting. It's the French and the Turks are fighting against each other, and there's a huge cannon battle, and cannons are firing everywhere. And the guy says, how come you're not firing back? Because the people in the fort weren't shooting back at the Turks. And he's like, it's Wednesday. We're supposed to have a ceasefire today. The Turks are just shooting at them and decimating them. And it's just the absurdity of what they're doing and sort of doing their traditions of New Year's. And also, I don't know if it was because they crossed, I think it was New Year's, but also I swear I think they did a thing where you cross the equator, because there's a sailing thing where when you cross the equator of the Earth, you do a celebration. You everybody cheers and you go yay. And
if I ever do it, I'll
but I don't know. If that was part of it, but that was a great part too. And I think it's important. I think
they're just how programmed they are, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. But I think it's good too because a movie like this can potentially be so dark that it's almost too dark to enjoy. You know what I mean?
We talked about this when we were watching The Host, and all of the humor that is peppered through the movie, which sort of pulls you back from feeling too heavy about the movie and taking you out of your enjoyment for it.
And Parasite too, with his movie Parasite, which could be a really dark, depressing story, but he adds a lot of comedy and kind of weirdness into it to keep you kind of
it's not even, it doesn't get you to a place where you're laughing. It just brings a little bit of levity.
Well, and what's funny is it's people will sort of talk about and complain about things that pull you out of the movie, something so weird and random happened that it just pulls you out. But the thing that what's interesting is that kind of thing pulls you out of the movie, but it does it in a way where you need to be pulled out of the movie for a second, so that you're not oh my god, this is so nightmarish and horrible.
Because there is a point where you will disconnect from a movie just because it's just too, it's outside of your realm of understanding, there's a lot of, I remember in the 90s watching a lot of these Mexican, dramas, movies, not the soap operas. Soap operas are huge in Mexico, and I grew up. My whole family would sit around the TV in the evenings and watch soap operas together because there were like morning soap operas, afternoon soap operas, and evening soap operas, and even soap operas for kids.
Nice.
Crazy, right? Anyway, but there's also a whole slew of like art house movies in the 90s that were so dramatic and tragic that you're like, are you kidding me? Is this the end of the movie? Like, it's too much, and it takes you out of it as well, and then it actually makes you not even think about the movie. Yeah. You're just thinking about the way that you're feeling and how you're like, well, this isn't even real, so why am I fucking crying? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That was a long explanation, but I'm just trying to get at that if you make your movie too sad, no one's going to like it.
Well, yeah, and especially because that part of the movie where they encounter all those guys with the axes, it's like, they're so fucked at that point. It's just kind of, because those guys not only have better weapons, but they all have body armor and stuff like that.
And they're all healthy.
Yeah, they're all big and well-fed.
They're well-fed, maintained,
I kept thinking, I forgot how this part happened, but I remember thinking, like, go back, close the door. Close the door.
I thought they might do some alternate plan where they're like, okay, shut the door, now we have to figure out how to go around them or whatever.
They should have fucking listened to Yono.
But,
because even before that, like, she warned them not to, like, open the gate at this point.
They already opened it, like, she
now I'm already had it taken care of.
But also, and the story and the movie is all about pushing forward to the front of the train. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they're not going to go around or figure out, like, an alternate way. They have to just keep moving forward.
And because it's, again, linear. And then on top of that, there's even if they wanted to cut their journey short, they at least have to get to the water, which is on the other side of a bunch of dudes with axes and poison fish.
And that's where the main, to sort of connect to what we find out at the end and what we've talked about a little, that is where most of the people are killed when they talk about how they're going to kill like 70% of the population for the poor people. That's where it all happens, and that was kind of where they intended it to happen.
Here's another question that I hadn't really thought about. So they end the fight by kind of doing that Ender's Game trick where you just move to the front and you capture the flag, or Mason in this particular instance, and you get everybody to drop their weapons. What's keeping all those dudes in that cart?
In the cart? Which part?
Okay, so they win this battle by losing most of their numbers and capturing Mason, and they move ahead. Did they kill those dudes once they put down their weapons? Like, those dudes are just still there waiting, or did they move towards the back and start killing people? Or
they are kind of in the back, and you do sort of see them killing people.
Right.
Remember,
so
they
maybe
touch
they lock the doors behind
guy.
them. Exactly. So they probably close the doors behind them, and then but then at some point you see them killing Gilliam anyway.
Yeah.
Gillian, sorry, right?
Gilliam.
John Hurt.
Which I feel like that's intentional.
Yeah.
Because, like, the Terry Gilliam sort of feeling aspect, I wonder, like, they named that character Gilliam, which I wonder if was a reference.
I know, it sounds like we're not quite ready to talk about the Willy Wonka favor, which I'm actually really in favor of, I do think. But I think that, it's crazy when you have a director that is developing a reputation for adding so many Easter eggs that you don't know what's real and what's a real reference and what's a coincidence. Kind of like with Stanley Kubrick, when you're like, did he really? Is that what that means? Does that bear mean that he was having sexually abusing it's just, it gets crazy, right? So you don't know what's real, you don't know what's a coincidence, but that's what I was getting at. Where it's like with him, it could very likely be a real reference, just to keep you on your toes.
But it's good in a realism kind of way, and in a non-Hollywood kind of way, where they touch back. There's that bald guy who I'm pretty sure I recognize from Minority Report, the Tom Cruise Minority Report. I think he's in that. I definitely recognize him from another post-apocalyptic movie, but where him and the guards are all still killing people and doing their, culling of the poor people, while we're still progressing to the end of the movie, which is kind of
It makes
good
sense. Okay.
non-Hollywood touch, because I feel like in a Hollywood movie it would feel like, we've rescued everyone in the back. Like, they're all fine now that we've progressed.
And then, I totally forgot that there's that dude with the other boss that's walking around. I forget his name.
The guy, the kind of regular, generic-looking white guy.
Yeah, that dude. Of course, like, I forgot, they're still in the back killing people. Mm-hmm. They just basically lock the door behind
Which,
them.
I have a big question about him.
They were just really relaxed, though. I'm not sorry to interrupt, I'm just saying, like, I just kind of forgot about it. Because everyone was kind of fucking relaxed as they're moving through the fucking kindergarten room. Eating their fucking eggs.
That's a great scene.
Looking at the fucking manta rays and eating fucking sushi. Alright, let's move on.
But, wait, the guy, who did you just bring up that?
The other killer that's really hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot his name.
Like,
the nondescript.
We talk about the classroom and stuff, we'll get all to that, of course, but I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but that guy, like, he basically gets killed in that part where they fight with him and they spear him. They like spear him and.
I thought that they spear him in the sauna, right? And then he shows up again at the end, like he's injured, but he shows
gets
up
weirdly revived.
Yeah, and then he has to fight Nom at the end. Mm-hmm. So. No, Claude
I want to say his name was
in
Claude.
The orange that was selecting the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
But there was a weird part that the only part of the movie I didn't get was where that guy was like dead and then they revived him. Somehow he sort of came back to life and then became invulnerable. Like they would just shoot him and it didn't hurt him.
And then him and
some of the
are trying to shoot at each other from.
But also some of the ravers in the rave part were sort of revived and they became almost like zombie-like. They were sort of staggering.
Were they like on drugs? Was it PCP? Or was it Chronal?
Was it the Chronal? I don't know, but it was weird because
and why would they want to fight so much?
There was some odd situation that happened that I didn't pick up on.
And why is Wilford right next to the ravers?
Yeah. But the school part was great.
Yeah,
that was a really good part.
And I forget this actress's name, but she played the school teacher.
Yeah, she was awesome.
And she was she was the romantic interest in Goon. And I love that movie Goon. It is such a cute fucking romantic movie.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I've seen that.
What's that?
That's Allison Pill.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she's great.
Allison Pill.
The Scott Pilgrim movie?
No. As the lead? Oh, she is?
Is she the drummer?
Yeah, she is.
In the drummer of Scott's band in the movie, I think?
Maybe.
Is that
her?
It's
Kim Pine.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, she does that really great part where she's just so creepy, and it kind of goes to show the really heavy propaganda that's involved in the running of the train. Oh, creepy-ass kids.
Which, another thing that this movie reminded me of a lot of things. I didn't feel like they were ripping things off or copying things, but there was just so much stuff that I felt like, I was just like, oh my god, like, this reminds me so much of BioShock. Also, if you've ever played the video game BioShock, where the wealthy guy makes the underwater city, and then all hell breaks loose in the underwater city, and it's kind of similar. But you have it's very similar where you have like this very wealthy guy who basically sets himself up as sort of the king and god of this new society that he builds. Kind of very Ayn Rand style kind of situation. And everybody that lives there kind of praises him and is like, oh, he's the greatest, which they do in this movie. It kind of reminded me of that a bit.
Yeah, they don't tell you the complete history behind him or like of what's happening on Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
They only focus on the good aspects of the character, and that's it. Just he's the sole reason why we're surviving at this point.
It does, as we learn more about what's his name, Wilford. I at first I was convinced that there would be nobody there, that Wilford had died.
Yeah.
I thought that it was going to be like, if you've ever seen Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, where the main villain, you find out that the main villain is actually dead and that everything is just kind of automated and running itself. I thought for sure there'd be like nobody in the main
but
car.
But instead you're like, Ed Harris, what are you doing here?
Well, and then I was like, Ed Harris, wait, now it's like Westworld and it's the man in black and he's got his like Westworld that he's created.
God. Sorry, I just kind of now he's pigeonholed.
But we can't, since we're bringing up Ed Harris, we can't forget Creepshow, one of the best a great horror movie with Ed Harris, very young Ed Harris.
Is he the one where he falls into the grave? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the boyfriend of Where's My Birthday Cake?
Yeah. That's a good one.
He's the boyfriend. But Ed Harris is great. And we talked about Abyss, which he is in, of course. He's connecting everything. I didn't realize, I hadn't seen the movie in a long time, but I completely forgot that Ed Harris was in the movie. When he appeared, I was like, oh my God!
Ed Harris!
Ed Harris as Hugh Hefner in his pajamas and bathrobe.
Crazy. All right.
Yeah, just hanging out, cooking steaks at the front of the train. But I thought like the fact that the guns actually came into play, like in the school setting, no less, was extremely telling for like, American audiences.
Right? Like it's the teacher who has the gun and starts shooting people because
and the egg guy.
Exactly. Wilfred was ahead of his time in training teachers to have guns and defend students by shooting everyone.
Those first graders, they can be trouble. But
and that was another Terry Gilliam thing. Felt very Terry Gilliam was that classroom scene.
Oh, sure.
The kind of surrealism and the propaganda, and just how surreal it was. And the fact that she pulls out the gun. And
in the part where like
the eggs.
Nothing stops. Like a normal reaction would have been fear, and I guess you can tell yourself like, oh, she didn't want to scare the kids.
Oh yeah.
But it's more of the again, if you want to lay more in the Terry Gilliam sort of connection. Yeah, the whole like it doesn't matter if you walked in clearly out of a war zone basically, and you look like it. But nobody is reacting to you and what you look like and what's happened to you.
Mm-hmm. What? It's like, and I feel like that was I agree, that was an interesting thing because it's like,
I liked it.
Whenever it happened earlier in the movie too, where in the wealthier areas of the train, basically the revolutionary people would like walk through, most of the time, the people in the area wouldn't freak out. They wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, there's these like poor, disheveled people walking through." And I feel like that was actually kind of smart and well done because in real life, but also in real life, you can have like a super wealthy area, like some golf country club, and then like a guy or multiple people will walk through who are very clearly, like, very poor, and they're, like, people who work on the, like, grounds or whatever.
I see.
And they might walk right through the middle of the golf club, but the people in the golf club would just be like, whatever, I don't care, because they know, like, oh, these are just the people who work on the club, on the grounds or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, whatever, like, we're used to seeing them working for us and doing for us. And so I kind of felt like in the school and in the rave club and stuff, they didn't immediately freak out or think that something was wrong because it's just like, whatever. Like, we see poor people around, whatever.
I thought it was more of like everybody's so, I used the word sedated earlier. Maybe that's not the right word, but they're just so into themselves and they're so comfortable in their existence that they don't really care to think about what else could be happening around them, and they're so like maybe not pampered, but they've gotten to a point where they feel very safe, Although there's been a couple of rebellions, but I guess they never made it past a certain point. Like, not to the point where the upper class saw anybody, I guess.
Yeah, I think they never made it past the water before.
They never made it past the dudes, the henchmen.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, what do they... Oh, yeah, so after the classroom, they go to that's the rave room.
No, after that, don't they go to the two food rooms?
The
so the farming room, and then the sushi room, or the aquarium?
Right. The aquarium, which looks... At the Academy of Arts.
Yeah, the Academy of Science, yeah.
At the Academy of Sciences here, they had that exact kind of thing where you walk
You're walking through a tunnel and like there's something around you.
And the fish
it's
and
very
everything
cute.
are there. It looks exactly like that. It's funny.
Okay.
Some of those fish are crazy looking.
Mm-hmm. That was one of those things. I'm not going to nitpick the movie, but when you hear like the history of the train and how it was set up, it's like, how did they? There's no way they set up that aquarium room. There's just no way. Like, but I'm not going to. It's fine. I'm not going to nitpick it. But how they?
And oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
the
like
fish
seeing,
are only
like,
there to be
walk
eaten.
into, I think,
For the sushi.
I'm thinking of that oh my god, I can't believe I forgot the Mel Gibson movie where he's a cop and
Lethal Weapon.
yes, Lethal Weapon. Remember the spoof of Lethal Weapon where he walks into his trailer or something and it's like a palatial mansion inside?
Yeah.
Because I mean, some of these cards, when you look at it from the outside, they're all uniformly shaped. But then when you go on the inside, there's all sorts of shit happening. And you're like, wait a minute.
Way bigger.
This thing is like 30 feet tall.
But,
Sorry, Bong.
But no, it makes sense because it's cool. It shows you how more and more opulent the wealthy areas become as you move closer to the front of the train. It's just like becomes outlandish in terms of, they're living in this post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
But now we've gotten to so far to the front and the wealthiest areas that it's like kind of absurd, like the stuff that they do.
You know what's so funny? Like, I feel bad because this whole movie's supposed to, like, tell you all about, like, hey, don't live in a box. Don't let capitalism, like, dictate how we live our lives. And all I could think about is, like, hey, so that car with that little old lady reading books and drinking tea, how much for that? That's all I could think about. That can't be too expensive, right? I don't have to be up front eating sushi.
I mean, if you have to ask, it's probably too expensive. That's generally the rule of thumb.
Drug them with the sushi, but they didn't.
And then that's when you see Tilda eating a protein bar.
Oh, yeah.
She's so fucking good. She's so weird.
Yeah, which is actually made from like seaweed and sugar.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say that's the other. It's like you're either eating bug protein bars or you're eating seaweed algae protein bars. It's kind of one or the other.
Licking mossy rocks.
Yeah. Because that's the next. They should have had like the algae room where they grew algae, but not.
Exactly. And so the farming room was cute, and then we've got the fish room, and then after the fish room, what comes next?
The rave? Is that the rave room?
I think it might be no. At some point, people die. Oh, the sauna room.
Oh yeah.
And the pools.
Oh
so
yeah.
Go through like a recreational area.
Right,
so and so in the sauna, which I believe is the first part. No, the second part, because the dude with the gun comes through the pool room. Which was very small. There were 2 tiny pools, okay? But let's have a whole cart that's a bunch of fish. Although you have to eat the fish, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, and I think that's where... No, Tanya dies in the classroom, huh? Is that right? No, she dies...
Which one's Tanya?
Octavia Spencer.
Oh, yeah.
Like the only female on the fighting team.
Yeah. Did she die in the...
Oh, yeah, she died.
Before that? Did she die before that in the school? In the
I think she might have died in the classroom, but I can't remember if she made it.
Yeah, she's killed alongside Gray from the henchmen. The seamlessly like
Franco,
invincible
that's
one.
right.
It's
And
Franco was the
and
name of
then
the henchman.
I love the scene in the sauna where he's smart enough to look into the pods.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just like the lady who's like, get out of here. and then moves her head, and there's an arm and his daughter, and then fighting ensues.
That was a cool looking area too.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of Star Wars.
Because of the
Return of the Jedi, those lights.
Yeah.
It was like kind of when Luke fights Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi.
I love the whole aspect of the guy just like open firing and then like killing one of the upperclassmen, and then of course you have the guards like, "Hey, you can't do that."
Like,
just
that's
kills
sort
him
of.
too.
I don't know if that's sort of just a nod to you can't control everything and everyone, even if they're on your team.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was interesting.
Well, I mean, the guards are definitely. I would say the guards are not part of the upper class society.
No, they've got to be like there were some barracks.
Expendable.
They had better barracks, but not by much. Because at one point where they're moving up from the back of the train, they come to some barracks where there's less beds, but there's food, regular food, and nobody's there. Which I'm guessing that was the fighters were living there because they were off somewhere preparing to fight.
Yeah. I would bet. Yeah. I mean, it's not in the movie, but I'm sure that the guards were probably the poor people who were like brought up and given, more food, more stuff, and then they basically became,
snitches.
Yeah, because I don't think you would be able to have like the truly elite people on that train be the guards.
That's
they
true. There's got to be a service group.
Mm-hmm, exactly, which would come from the poor group.
Yeah.
Being raised up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Which, the train mirrors the real world.
Turns out it's man.
Which man is the monster?
Alright, so sauna room, great fight scene in that. Jesus. Because, that's the one where Curtis blacks out, and then we get the crazy revival of the martial artist dude.
And
Did he come back after we thought he was dead or something? Or?
I meant to rewind it because I felt like I missed something in that
part. Yeah, I was like,
part.
whatever happened to that guy? Now that he's here.
But the way that he was revived and it seemed like some of the wealthy people who had been killed were revived. Mm-hmm. At least that's what it seemed like to me. Did I miss him? Did you guys notice that?
Who was revived from the wealthy?
Mainly that guard guy who got killed was.
Franco, yeah.
Mainly.
Okay.
But it seemed like also some of the wealthy people in the rave room were revived and sort of became almost zombie-like and sort of.
I'm still thinking drugs, man.
Yeah, that might have been what it was. That they were under the chronal.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they were right next to Wilford unless they were meant to be sort of like some sort of like thick human dancing soup between, everybody and Wilford in case he needed like bodies to shield him from something. Yeah. I don't know. You guys might have to explain that one to me.
But then we of course get to, and then of course we get to
Wilford,
Wilford and the train.
Well, the door, right? And they have that great moment where Nana's like, okay, we can go through this door and talk to Wilford, or we can go through this other door and go outside. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now of course has the plan of, all right, the real reason why we have all this chronal is so we can use it as an explosive since it is highly flammable. And, he's just looking to escape the train with his daughter Yana, believing that the snow has melted because there was a point where they saw like an airplane and like the last rotation, you couldn't really see anything, but now like you could start to see the wings. So, he believes that the Earth is livable at this point in time. And of course, you have that moment where, Curtis is outside. He's really wanting to meet Wilford at this point in time. And then he really explains like the earlier part of the train where 17 years ago, the tail section had to result to, cannibalism in order to survive. They were eating their own. And then,
and then
he was
also,
eating babies.
There's a big sort of character trait that's revealed in that speech, which is that not only was he the aggressor initially, but he at this point hasn't sacrificed a limb. He hasn't sacrificed his body for the benefit of the community or his community. Because they tell that great story where, so he's about to attack this woman with a baby because they want the baby to eat the baby, who later turns out to be Edgar. And they kill the mom, and then they kill the mom, I think.
Yeah.
He kills the mom. He kills the mom, and he's about to eat the baby, and then Gilliam, I always forget his name.
Gilliam.
Gilliam, yeah, he's the one that cuts his arm off and offers it to them, right, to eat. And then everybody starts cutting off limbs to offer him to eat.
That was another part I had to, like, maybe I'm a bad person. But
you might be a bad person.
That was another part that made me laugh, was when he was like, and then a wondrous thing happened. Everybody started cutting their limbs off
Merry
and offering
Christmas,
them.
everyone!
So I just had this like image of everybody like sawing their arms off and being like, "Here, eat my arm."
I'm trying to think of that New Year's Eve song. Da, 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 da. And then, well, I mean, like, I was just saying that in this particular speech, you find out that one of the big driving factors in his motivation to be a leader is because he has taken so much from people and he hasn't given it back.
Yeah,
he hasn't sacrificed. And the whole thing about the hand, arm, whatever. And so that's, it becomes really a little bit on the nose, but I liked it, where he sacrifices his arm to get Timmy out of the machine well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what was the thing, though? Remember they showed him earlier where he had the scar on his arm? And
what was that? Maybe, didn't he say he tried to cut his arm off and he couldn't do it?
Was that what it was? Because, I didn't understand.
Did he say that? Do you remember, T?
I think he just couldn't. He couldn't bear the thought of it, so he didn't actually commit.
Psychologically do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so,
he wasn't ready at that point.
Yeah, so basically his chance to kind of sacrifice himself for the greater good.
But can you imagine, John, like everybody's taking off a limb so that we can all eat, and then you don't do it, and we're all like, wow, John, wow. No, you can't hold my baby.
Which, again, not to compare... But not to compare things, but again, like there is a Monty Python skit where
it's just a scratch.
All the sailors are in a boat, and it's like a lifeboat, and they start talking about like who they're gonna they might have to meet somebody, and then one of the characters like sort of does the selfless speech where he's like, "You can eat my leg," and then like one of the other guys is like, "No, like you can eat my like arm," and then they start like arguing over who can eat who, and being like, I clearly have better like muscle tone, and they're kind of fighting with who should eat who. But I did, it's a great movie, but that part is very like heavy-handed, and
I loved it. I thought it was.
So
I thought Chris Evans did really, really well. I could feel the heaviness in his speech, and I liked it. And then he got a cigarette out of it, so he's laughing all the way to the cancer ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last
cigarette, but the last cigarette.
No, probably Wilford has a bunch.
That was a funny scene earlier in the movie when he pulls out the first one earlier,
and he throws it away.
The whole crowd of people is like, oh, like they all lean forward and are looking
and he
at
takes like 2 puffs and then he throws it away, or maybe he's smoking it while they're having a conversation when he throws it away, and then everybody like pounces on it.
Yeah, everyone grabs it.
That's good.
But so also heavily reminded me the part where he gets to the engine room and talks to Wilfred, so much like The Matrix 2. Because when Neo meets with the engineer in The Matrix 2,
that's right.
He basically tells Neo, you're not the one is something that plays out over and over. There are these revolts and these rebellions that happen as a pattern over and over, and it's something that we do, and we do it to maintain the Matrix, and almost identical. And I'm not saying this movie's ripping anything off, but it's so close where the Wilfred tells him, hey, we let you have those rebellions earlier as a way to keep the population under control and to kill everyone, and we were the ones sending you the messages.
Giving you a little bit of hope, too.
Yeah. And very much the Matrix kind of idea.
And I feel like if we really thought hard about it, this would be a story or a plot line or a plot that is repeated throughout.
Yeah.
throughout like many decades of movie making because it's so basic, you know. But also, I mean, when I say basic, I don't mean that it's not intelligent, that it's not, you know, that it's not worthy. Mm-hmm. It's a great, you know, plot twist, you know, and also not necessarily one that's not true for us in our world, right? So just to get a little intellectual and intense on you, but I forgot what I was talking about.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's the idea that at all times the wealthy and powerful were always controlling it. You know, that they never they never really were sort of acting out of their own self determination. It was always that they were being manipulated.
They were just pawns
the whole time.
They were cogs in a machine.
And then ultimately, he realizes, of course, the decision that must be reached in these situations in the Matrix or any kind of story, which is that the only real solution is to leave
Shut it
the
down.
system, to just not take part in the system, not perpetuate the system, and just leave it, exit it, and start a new system.
Start a new system.
Mm-hmm. And leave the train.
It was very satisfying to finally see Claude get it. Because, I mean, they had all these like characters throughout the movie that were, I don't know how to describe them. They're just like the teasers, the ones that like mock you on the other side of like, you know, a gate or a glass partition. You know, like the guy with the eggs, and you've got Claude, and of course Mason does the same thing. But she's really obnoxious. And then of course when she finally gets it, although the girl in the citrus colored clothing and stuff. So that was nice.
Another Hunger Games character.
That's true. and then just to like wrap up the story, of course, Curtis gets offered the position of engineer, but then, you know, comes in and magically, clairvoyantly knows that there's small children running the gears, running the engine, and then that's Curtis was thinking about it for a second. He's like, well, I guess I could be a nice engineer and send more protein bars down south. But then when he saw the little kids, that was it.
I was surprised. That kind of caught me off guard, too, because I was actually thinking about the kids, because when they go to the school, they ask about the kids, because maybe we think that maybe the kids are being kidnapped and being
like
given to the wealthy
to
parents
raise,
who can't have kids.
Like, just because they want the kids or because they have to raise some kids. Yeah.
That's what I thought. When they first took the kid in the very beginning of the movie, I thought it was like, some wealthy people want a child, and so they're just like, go down and pick one out.
Exactly, pick one out.
But then we find out, of course, that they're needed because certain parts have degraded and become extinct, and the children are the only way to keep that running and to have them in there. Which, by the way, I want to throw in, back in the day, like in the 1800s and 1700s, when little kids
still
worked in factories and things, that was exactly the reason
kind of shit they were doing,
that they
little
worked,
hands.
because their little hands and their little arms could reach into the machines where adult hands and arms couldn't, and
probably losing fingers,
and they would lose limbs and get killed.
Shit.
But that was exactly the thing with the kids.
Mining and stuff, small like openings that they
And that was a great shot too, where they lift up the panel and there's just like the kids
Tiny
that are
little
like doing stuff underneath the floorboards.
And then Ed Harris is like, no.
And he's.
Yep, and you see all the moving gears too.
It looks like he's like clearing muck out of the gears.
Oh, is that what he's doing? Okay.
So I was thinking, I was like, oh, that's actually like.
I don't want to sound like a bad guy. That's a very important job I'm doing.
But I was like, that's actually really clever, because like that's like that. Like when they say that the kids have to fulfill a role that the machines can't, that feels kind of abstract. But to actually show the kid doing that, it's like, oh, that's actually a real thing that you would want a little kid to do, like to clear. He can get his hands in there and clear the dirt out of the gears, in there.
So of course that's the last straw for Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
He punches Ed Harris, and then Nama kills Franco finally, and then they blow up the side door. Claude gets taken out with Chrono, and then the explosion kills everybody. Although, what happened to the rest of the people on the other parts of the train? But let's not get into that.
Well, I mean,
the train crashes.
When the train crashes, lots of people die. I was kind of blown away that they showed, because a lot of the cars
just fall off the...
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, there's still a lot of cars.
It was like 3/4 of the train went off the rails.
I mean, I would assume there's people in every part of the train, but yeah, they show a lot of the train just straight up being destroyed.
That was pretty good.
And those people dying, which was surprising, because in a more Hollywood version, once they blow up that door and stop the train, everyone would survive.
Mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? Like, it would stop in a way where there was no destruction of the train. And it's like, yay, we did it. Everyone, But this movie, it's like, at least like half more of the survivors get killed in that train crash.
True. And then, of course, and Timmy get to go out into the frozen wilderness that is melting. And there's a healthy polar bear to greet them, and hopefully they don't get eaten.
That's right. My first thought was, that polar bear is going to try to eat you guys. You gotta get out of there.
He's pretty healthy, so maybe he's not super hungry just then. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Or he's going to offer them a Coke. One of the two.
Time now, right? Like, the before the technical interruption. I think an hour and a half, is that where we're at, or more, actually, right? I think we almost hit an hour previously. Okay.
Now we're like an hour 27, but that was just from my side. But who knows? But I thought it was interesting because the whole time they're talking about like how we're gonna kill off 74% of the passengers, and everything has to be in a set manner, and then the explosion puts you well beyond that point because you got the entirety of the tail, and then more than half of the train itself at that point in time. So it's like even if they were still trying to live on the train at that point in time, like you wouldn't be fucked either way because it wouldn't be self-sustaining at that point.
Choice. Although I was like thinking you would definitely want to camp out in the destroyed train cars for a little while you kind of forage out from there and use that as your home base.
I mean, those fish are still perfectly good in the aquarium. And all those eggs.
And another movie I want to compare to is George Lucas's THX 1138, which is his first movie before Star Wars. And it's about a sort of post-apocalyptic society that lives underground. And then it's all a big chase, and then he gets out and emerges into the real world. And we find that the real world has sort of healed itself. And this is kind of a common thing with some post-apocalyptic stories where a society will lock itself away, and then things have actually improved and repaired themselves on the earth, but they've become so accustomed to living in their little post-apocalyptic society that they don't realize that the world's actually a lot better place now.
One of my favorite post-apocalyptic movies, although apocalyptic movies is kind of the same than saying post-apocalyptic, is A Boy and His Dog, or A Man and His Dog. Remember that one?
Yeah.
With Don Johnson and a dog. Great movie. Really creepy. A lot of whiteface.
So let's talk about fan theories, because we mentioned this last week and also earlier in the episode. So there was the theory floated around the internet that Snowpiercer is connected to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and this is an alleged sequel to Willy Wonka. So, but okay, here's some of the similarities. Obviously, both of these movies are kind of structured in a sense where you have these large groups of people who are working through like this fantastical sort of structure. You also have members of each group deciding to, leave. In Wonka, it's, by accident in some cases. Snowpiercer, it's more a permanent, because it's death. Uh, and of course, one person in each movie makes it towards a very tail end to encounter, the wealthy, very eccentric person who explains the entire journey to them and how it was a test because they're looking for a successor. Which, of course, in this case, Ed Harris was trying to get, Chris Evans to, helm the train at this point in time. And, so, basically, everyone's looking at, Ed Harris's Wilford character to be, the grown-up version
and,
of Charlie
there's a lot of similarities that
in this
did
movie.
actually ring true. So I can buy into some level of intention on the part of the director to make these movies kind of sort of connect with each other. And again, we were talking about the story of a hero, going through some trials, and then, the plot twists that are common. I mean, they can all just be, the same. It's the story we know, basically. So that's not too far-fetched. And then there's my favorite connection that I found was in listening to some other videos or other reviews was the music. So the la da da la da. So there are several parts in Snowpiercer where that little progression is repeated.
Really?
Most clearly or most closely to the Willy Wonka movie at the very end where Yono and Timmy are walking out into the frozen wilderness. They actually repeat those notes, and it's very good. Yeah. And then throughout the movie, there were several places where they're either in minors or drawn out, but the tune is clearly there. So I thought that was really cool. And then there were just a lot of comparisons to the two plots being very side by side in terms of the trials and in terms of the different things that they have to overcome. And then there were some really stupid connections, which I was like, no. I can't remember what the dumbest one was, which was there was a piece of cloth on a shelf in Ed Harris's room, and somebody's like, that really deep, dirty burgundy piece of cloth, that could be Charlie's red scarf. And I was like, you motherfucker, you shut your face. Yeah, you lost me. And then there's a lot of comparisons to, for example, the really obnoxious little girl that dies, or not dies, but, comparing her to Mason. And then age-wise, apparently it kind of works with Ed Harris being a grown-up Charlie. And then, and the other part that I really liked was the emblematic W in different places. Yeah. In Willy Wonka, in the factory, in the gates, and then on Snowpiercer, just the front door of Wolford's, big old W, which plays into it.
Yeah. The funny thing is, for some weird reason, the W kept reminding me of what is it from Alien? What's the name of the company that building better worlds?
I forgot.
The company that runs the corporation from Alien is a big W as well. And they're terraforming planets. But also in terms of the Willy Wonka, it's also the thing where Willy Wonka is the one who does not aspire to having power and money and control, and that's why he's the right person to sort of run the company, because he's honest, and not that what's his name wants that, but it's sort of
Chris Evans.
But Chris Evans' character is sort of he doesn't necessarily want it. That's not his whole goal in trying to get to the front.
And then my favorite loose connection that I thought was I don't believe it, but that's pretty neat, was that so having small little kids working the engine of the train kind of mirrors Oompa Loompas. And they don't get to leave; they just live there.
They just have to definitely.
That was kind of
But I don't know. I would have to. I hadn't heard the theory about Willy Wonka. I'll have to watch some videos, but I don't know. It just feels like it's. It feels like people are connecting it to Willy Wonka simply because of the part where Ed Harris offers him to take over, and he's like, "Hey, I want you to be the one to take over and blah blah blah.
Pretty much.
But like, I don't know.
They compare that dude Franco to the little kid that's a cowboy and likes to shoot guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stupid stuff like that. But it was fun to think about for sure.
But yeah, I don't know how well it's like thinking back on it, like how much it connects to Willy Wonka, other than just that Willy Wonka is also kind of a linear story where you move from thing to thing and people die along the way, and then you get to the, and it has that linear structure.
And then there's this really mean-spirited part where they compare Claude to the plump boy in Willy Wonka, and they're like, well, she's a big girl and clearly has no self-control. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's just mean.
No,
that could be that kid's daughter. I'm like, for fuck's sake. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I know. That doesn't like. Like the thing about the kids in Willy Wonka is that the point is that they're all like spoiled kids. They're all spoiled in different ways, and they get punished for it. Yeah. But the characters who work their way through the train, Chris Evans and her and everyone, are not spoiled or bad in any way. They are actually trying to do something positive. And so when they die, it's not like a punishment for being a spoiled brat or something like that.
Just eat your protein bar.
Exactly. The protein bars are like the Willy Wonka bar.
Oh, and the other connection was the hiding tickets or communications and food. I know.
Yeah, it's different.
I like the music one, and I like the W one.
It's different because the communications in this movie are for him to like help him progress to the front of the train, or to do their little revolution.
To help Charlie get to to the Willy Wonka factory.
Right, to find his successor. But I guess it would be more of an obvious connection if the idea was whoever got to the front of the train would be the successor. Oh. But in this movie, it's implied that Chris Evans' character was chosen to be the successor before he ever, which I don't know why. They basically are like, mwahaha, it was the plan all along that you would be the person who gets here and is the successor.
Well, there was
but why though?
Well, I don't know about why, but wasn't there, I can't remember if it was Mason or Claude. I think it was Mason who was like, oh, we know who you are. We've been watching you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he was chosen before the revolution took, and they even said, because Gilead was part of the evil peoples, he was a plant.
And he took his fucking arm off.
But he cut his own arm off. I know. Again, not to criticize, this is a great movie, but there are some of those aspects of the kind of conspiracy theory aspect of it that don't quite bear out when you've seen the movie more than once, and you kind of think about it. It's like, that doesn't quite link up. The like, you were chosen to be the one all along, and we were culling the poor people, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, your plan succeeded, I guess. 100%. So, I mean, it's like, but, no, I don't know. But,
that's good. I like that.
But at least he just
I love the eye roll. I guess.
And another little nitpick, too, and this is a tiny nitpick because I think I know this reasoning, but when they finally crash the train at the end of the movie, and it goes through the tunnel, and the first few cars come out of the tunnel, and it crashes and finally comes to a stop, the train tracks after the tunnel are completely gone. Like, it's completely snowed over, and there's no trace of the train tracks at all after that tunnel. Okay. And so part of me was thinking, well, the train was probably going to crash at that point, no matter what, because it got snowed over. But then maybe I was thinking, well, maybe they talk about how the train scoops up snow.
Well, they did it a bunch. Remember, incoming.
Yeah, when they crashed in that section. Yeah. So maybe it would have just plowed through that section anyways.
I think so.
But I thought it was kind of interesting that when we got that big the big long shot of the crashed train, I was looking for the continuation of the tracks, but there was just nothing there. Yeah.
Interesting.
But
interesting.
Oh, and one scene in particular that we didn't talk about, which was honestly one of my favorite parts of the
Oh, we
movie,
forgot to talk
is
about
when you
that.
have Chris
Yeah.
Evans having like the gunfight with the main henchman.
Mm.
Yeah, when they're both, you're going
Yeah.
like through a curve at this point on the train, and they're opposite sides of the train, and they're trying to like both fire across like this huge distance, which I don't know how that fucking would have worked to begin with, but that's besides the point. But both of them are just going shot for shot, and you could see the glass slowly starting to break. And I thought that was just very well done
And
and
then they're
completely different
eventually
from like
just
what we're
they're
used to seeing
just
in
kind of
these action
standing
movies.
there. At first, they're kind of ducking out of the way and trying to shoot at each other, but then eventually they just stand there and start shooting at each other, like trying to shoot through the hole of the glass because it's kind of bulletproof, but not completely.
But it's just that they're never going to get the accuracy.
Mhm.
So yeah. Stop wasting bullets.
And it's nice.
Yeah, they're just like, well, this isn't going
outside of the
anywhere.
train when it's doing those turns and stuff, it looks just like the model when they show the little model of the circular train.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks just like that when they're doing that turn part. But yeah, having the part where it turns and you can see across and shoot across, that was good.
Have you guys watched the TV series at all? I think they're on like season 4. I don't even know if it's going. I've never seen any. I feel bad because I'm like, I love Snowpiercer. I will not watch the TV show. And it's got Jennifer Connelly in it and everything.
I wonder if does it continue from the end of the movie?
No clue. Never watched it.
Or is it on the train?
It's got to be on the train because it seems to be on the train.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, it would kind of have to be on the train. But no, I've not seen it.
It's an arc.
I should get around to that for sure.
What do they call it? It's like a train. Is it train arc or just arc? They had like a name for it where he created the arc, which I kind of wish that it had just been climate change that caused this to happen. But they talk about how there was some
11 or 7 CW7. Yeah.
They could have just got. I almost feel like it would have been better. Oh, maybe it's just the time now where it's just plain old climate change. It wasn't like a special chemical being released. It just this is just what happened.
Guys, I gotta go to the bathroom too. Can we wrap it up?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So looking ahead next week, we will be discussing American Psycho release in 2000. Of course, that being directed by Mary Herron. Rod from Murder Moose should be with us next week to discuss that one. But obviously, American Psycho, one of the, best genre pieces out there.
Yeah.
Arguably, probably the best horror movie directed by a woman too. In this case. But, definitely a very quotable movie, tons of sex appeal, both from Patrick Bateman's character and also all the women that he's hooking up with. And I mean, everyone knows the business card scene. That's definitely been like one of the most prominent scenes in cinema.
I can't remember. You'll find it pretty easily. I can't remember the name of the channel, but there's a guy who makes YouTube videos where he inserts his cat into Hollywood movies. I can't remember. I can almost remember, but he does a really great job with the business card scene from American Psycho, where instead of comparing business cards, they're passing around their iPhones showing pictures of their cats on it. And it's so well done. It's literally the shots from the movie, but he uses visual effects to replace the business cards with cat photos. It's so good. That scene is really awesome.
So that should be next week, and of course, we got other movies lined up, but you'll learn more about that on our next episode. But with that being said, I do want to thank you again for tuning in to Handle with Scare. This has been episode number 72. If you guys are looking to keep in contact with our podcast, you can find all of our video content over on YouTube at Handle with Scare Pod. And you can also follow us over on Twitter at @handlewithscare. So with that being said, we are going to wrap it up here tonight. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. And of course, we will see you back next week for American Psycho. Y'all take care.